You walk in and they mistake your calm for emptiness. They don't hear the storm humming beneath your skin, the war drums thudding in the back of your mind. But soon enough, they feel it. Something shifts in the air the moment you enter. Not because you're loud, not because you take up space with ego, but because you take up space with certainty. The kind that doesn't beg, the kind that doesn't flinch, the kind that doesn't need a battalion behind it to feel like war. You don't move like a person, you move like strategy. You move like inevitability. And that makes them tremble, not because they're weak, but because they've never met anyone who carries that much resolve in silence. They were ready for arguments, they were prepared for drama, but they weren't prepared for precision. You don't charge like a rebel, you infiltrate like a ghost. While they scream to be seen, you make being unseen a weapon. While they posture, you position. That's what unsettles them. You never raise your voice, you never rush. You move like you already own the outcome, and deep down, they know. They're not dealing with someone trying to win, they're dealing with someone who's already won and is just now revealing the score. That kind of psychological presence, it doesn't just shake a room, it restructures the hierarchy within it. You became dangerous the day you stopped asking for permission. You stopped knocking, you started entering. Not out of disrespect, but because you no longer believed anyone had the authority to grant you access. And when people see someone who doesn't seek approval, doesn't wait for consensus, doesn't bend to social choreography, they panic. Because you're ungoverned, you're self-led. You move like the rules don't apply. Because you wrote your own. That's power. Not dominance by force, but influence by alignment. You don't need followers to feel validated. You are the movement. You carry momentum in your steps, vision in your silence, and command in your stillness. That terrifies the performative. You operate like a one-person war room. Every step you take is layered with intent. Every pause is strategy. Every glance is calculation. You've trained yourself to think 10 moves ahead. Not because you're paranoid, but because you've seen too much. You know that most people perform, most people project, but you study, you anticipate. You don't just read the room, you rewrite it. You make decisions like a general and disappear like an assassin. And when people finally notice the shift, when they realize they're no longer in control of the conversation, the plan, the tone, it's too late. You've already planted the flag. Psychologically, you trigger a very specific alarm, one rooted in primal awareness, the kind of fear that tells someone something greater is near. Not louder, greater. You move with the gravity of someone who's been forged by fire and never forgot the temperature. You don't need to declare your past, it leaks from your composure. You don't need to brag about your healing, it pulses from your decisions. When someone sees that, when they feel the weight of your focus, the chill of your detachment, the scope of your inner structure, they realize they aren't in a debate. They're standing in a campaign they didn't know they already lost. You don't match energy, you dictate it. You walk into conversations like you're setting the terrain. People look for cues in your stillness. They pause when you pause. They speed up when you lean forward. And they don't even realize it's happening. Because your presence doesn't ask, it orchestrates. You don't manipulate, you magnetize. You don't fight for control, you are control. Not the loud, chaotic kind, the surgical kind. The kind that doesn't show up with weapons, but whose silence makes every other voice recalibrate itself in your direction. That's the kind of authority you carry. And it makes the whole room feel like it's been drafted into your war. Most don't even realize how far behind they are until your results speak. And when they do, it's like thunder. You didn't make promises, you made moves. While they talked, you built. While they gossiped, you grew. And now they want to know how. They want your tactics, your blueprints, your formula. But they don't understand. You are the formula. Your life is your campaign. Your discipline is your army. Your conviction is your shield. And every part of you that used to apologize has now been weaponized into progress. That's what they feel. That's what they fear. A one-man siege wrapped in composure. You don't show all your weapons, you only show results. And by then, it's too late. They see the impact, not the preparation. They see the dominance, not the design. And they wonder why it feels like you brought an army with you. But it's not people that follow you, it's principles, habits, precision, focus. You march with things that cannot be stolen, faked, or replicated. And when someone sees that kind of momentum coming, they panic because they know they can't copy it. They have to become it. And most aren't willing to pay the psychological price for that kind of transformation. So you walk, alone, but never unaccompanied, with silence as your trumpet, with vision as your blade, with patience as your artillery. You don't need volume, you need clarity. And when you move, you don't just reach goals, you shift ecosystems. You shake illusions. You make people rethink their entire blueprint just by existing in alignment. That's why they panic. Not because you're trying to take what they have, but because you're living proof they never built anything real to begin with. You didn't show up with a gang. You became the force they feared a gang could never be. He screams so loud because they are still trying to convince themselves. Their brand is their shield. Their followers are their fuel. Their trend chasing is a distraction from the truth they fear facing in a mirror. But you didn't move like them. You built under the soil, quiet, rooted, unseen. You weren't obsessed with validation, so you never bent for applause. While they danced for the algorithm, you drilled into your obsession with brutal consistency. You didn't post about your progress, you became it. And now, when you enter, the room goes quiet. Not because you demanded attention, but because your presence outweighs 1,000 performances. The weight of a life lived with precision dwarfs the echo of lives lived for spectacle. They chase recognition, you chase results. They adjust with every wave of applause, you became the storm. And now, they don't know what to do with you, because you don't respond like they do. You don't flinch when ignored, you don't fumble when praised. You carry something ancient, the energy of one who chose silence not out of fear, but strategy. Every word you withheld was a sharpening of the blade. Every day you stayed quiet, you added to your arsenal. Now they shout in digital courtyards, trying to spark attention like dry wood. And you walk in like lightning, one strike, and everything rearranges. Not because you said so, but because you've earned it. Because when you walk into a space, it has no choice but to make room. There's a frequency to you that confuses the modern world. You don't check in, you don't over-explain, you don't overshare. You're the ghost in the data. The variable no one tracked because they thought silence meant irrelevance. They mistook your absence for absence of growth. But you weren't idle, you were refining your craft. You were building stamina where others were building status. You were cultivating patience in an era addicted to now. So when you stepped forward, the floorboards creaked, the air shifted, because you didn't return with a bang. You returned with a presence. And presence, real, cultivated, forged in fire presence, makes noise obsolete. They feel you now, even when you're not around. Your name rings in rooms you've never answered because those who witnessed your ascent can't stop replaying it. It was too calm to be accidental, too exact to be luck. You moved like a whisper, but landed like a verdict. The weight you carry is not made of clout or aesthetics. It's made of decisions, stacked day after day. While they played identity hopscotch, you hammered down your foundation. They became characters. You became a force. And now the stage shakes when you approach, because while they played to the crowd, you were becoming the standard. The crowd now subconsciously kneels to. Let them run in circles, let them brand themselves every new season. You move like a cathedral, silent, sacred, unshakable. You don't panic when overlooked, because you know what's being built in darkness is sacred. You understand what the modern mind has forgotten, that power doesn't announce itself, it arrives. And when it doesn't ask permission. It shifts the gravitational field of whatever orbit it steps into. That's you. The gravity they didn't account for. The variable that rewrites every trend you refuse to join. You don't flex your lifestyle. You exude lineage. The kind made of scars, rituals, and codes. Psychologically, your presence disrupts people's sense of self. They built their image around being ahead. You walk in and remind them they're chasing wind. Because the real ones, the dangerous ones, they aren't performing, they're designing. You don't pivot for trends because you architect paradigms. You live in a way that makes people realize their speed means nothing without direction. And you didn't just move in silence, you move with geometry. Every angle accounted for, every silence loaded. And when that type of structure enters a room full of improvisers, it doesn't speak to be heard, it speaks to end the conversation. They fear you because you didn't announce your worth. You let the void speak. You let the gap between their noise and your poise do the talking. Your silence was never the absence of voice, it was the refusal to waste it. While they sold versions of themselves to the highest bidder, you preserved the original. And now that it steps forward, unedited, unafraid, unbothered, it feels like a warning. You are the consequence of decades of dishonesty. You didn't react to the world. You responded to a vision. And now that vision wears your name and walks with your spine. The irony is, they will now try to mimic your silence, but they don't understand. Silence without inner weight is just emptiness. You filled your silence with rituals, with study, with movement, so precise it bled into your aura. And that aura, that's the real disruption. It tells the world, this one did not rush, this one knew. You move like someone who made friends with discomfort, who trained with discipline instead of aesthetics, who studied people instead of performing for them. And when that kind of person enters a space, the space changes, not because you demand it, but because the room remembers your kind. You've become the echo people chase without knowing its source, the blueprint they sense but can't reverse engineer. Because you moved alone and you moved long. While they were trying to impress the algorithm, you were reprogramming your mind. While they were curating feeds, you were curating focus. And now they feel you before you even speak. Not because you chased relevance, but because relevance collapsed into you. You are what happens when someone builds under silence, walks with intent, and only speaks once every piece is in place. You don't enter like a man, you enter like mass, like pressure, like gravity incarnate. That's the energy that makes crowds stop mid-sentence. That's the vibe that rewrites the hierarchy without a single post. And that's what makes you heavy. Not in burden, but in density. You are dense with meaning, with mastery, with refusal. You didn't follow the noise. You became the signal. And no matter how many trends rise or fall, they will always have to bend around the weight of what you built, quietly, relentlessly, unapologetically. They built their rhythm on dependency, on praise, on momentum borrowed from louder voices, on the artificial thrill of collective validation. They don't move until someone tells them it's safe, until a path is cleared, until the applause is louder than the fear. They crave direction like addicts, needing someone else's blueprint just to take a single step. But you became the compass. You didn't wait for signals, you became your own. You didn't rely on borrowed motivation, you forged your own pressure. And it wasn't for clout, it wasn't for pride, it was survival. It was design, it was the brutal acknowledgement that no one was coming to save you, so you became what you needed. That weight, it became your oxygen. That pressure, your pulse. And now, when you move, they feel it. Not because you speak, but because your movement exposes their stillness. You made a promise in silence, one no one heard but you, and every morning you wake up to fulfill it, not for approval, not for admiration, but because it's what keeps you intact. They move when told. You move because you said you would. That is what scares them. You walk into rooms already committed to your own standard, and that standard is higher than anything they've ever been held to. You aren't driven by fear of failure. You're driven by a rage to honor your word to yourself. That is discipline. That is sovereignty. And when someone moves like that, like their soul is on the line, the crowd takes a step back. Because they've never witnessed someone whose gravity doesn't come from followers, but from self-imposed standards. So relentless they make oxygen feel earned. You crafted yourself in silence and surrounded yourself with accountability no one else enforced. They don't get that. They fear rules until they're given. You fear betraying yourself. They respond to pressure from others. You generate it from within. You've built an ecosystem where your own word is law and deviation is death. You don't wait for deadlines, you create collisions. You don't wait to be pushed, you burn forward. And now that people see the result of that kind of architecture, they panic. Because they know they could never replicate it. They lack the internal enforcer, the commander inside the chest. You don't have an inner child begging to be seen. You have an inner general demanding execution. That's the difference. That's what shakes them. Most people live reactive lives. Something happens, then they move. Something crumbles, then they rebuild. You moved before anything broke. You anticipated the storm and built your fortress during clear skies. You didn't wait for betrayal. You studied the fault lines and their smiles. You didn't cry over the losses, you turned them into policies. And now, you are your own force. Unshakable not because of what you've gained, but because of what you've endured alone. Your expectations aren't vanity. They're scars transformed into blueprints. You raise the bar with blood, not with vision boards. And because of that, people feel your presence before you speak. They know you're not hoping for excellence, you require it. They whisper about your discipline like it's a disorder, as if having standards higher than theirs makes you dangerous. And they're right. It does. Because when someone refuses to lower their bar, even when no one is watching, even when no one is clapping, they become uncontrollable. You are that type. You don't care if they understand. You care if you meet your mark. You've weaponized self-respect. And that is lethal to those who rely on external reinforcement. You don't chase reward, you chase alignment. You don't measure progress in likes or comments. You measure it in quiet nights where you kept your word to yourself. That's where your authority comes from. That's what makes others uncomfortable. They can't measure you because your milestones are internal. You became the kind of person who hears a goal and feels the weight of it immediately. You don't romanticize achievement, you plan for its cost. While they fantasize about rewards, you're calculating the discipline required. That's what makes your moves feel so heavy, because they are. They're loaded with intention, with timelines only you know about, with stakes no one else understands. You walk like someone who already knows what's next, because you do. You've already scheduled your pain, you've already budgeted for your doubt. You move like a storm with a spreadsheet. They move like a breeze looking for applause. You don't perform. You manifest structure. You don't float between moods. You lock into timelines. Your actions are deliberate. Your silence is armed. Your goals are tattooed across the bones of your schedule. That kind of presence unnerves people, not because you're trying to intimidate, but because your self-honor shames their self-neglect. Your presence becomes a mirror, one that shows them how little they ask from themselves. They want to be inspired by you, but inspiration without discipline turns to resentment. And they can't keep up. Because while they're still deciding what matters, you're already 2 battles deep into what must be done. You wear pressure like a second skin. You eat doubt for fuel. You treat fatigue like background noise. And not because you're trying to be a hero, but because you remember the version of you that had nothing else. That desperation became doctrine. You don't wait to feel like it, you execute. You don't need mood, you need mission. And when that kind of mind enters a room full of people whose lives are dictated by the whims of convenience, they fall apart. Not out of hatred, out of realization that someone built a cathedral while they were waiting for motivation to knock. You don't need reminders. You are the reminder. The walking embodiment of what's possible when someone takes their standards personally. You don't move with pressure. You move as pressure. And that unnerves every soul built on comfort. Because you're not chasing peace. You're building it through war. A war you declared on your own mediocrity, on your former selves, on the soft illusions that kept you small. Now your movement is its own language, your walk a sermon, your silence a sword. You don't need to say a word to shake a room. You just have to enter. You've seen it, the stutter in their step, the dart in their gaze, people walking around with unspoken doubts, curled in the corners of their mouths, pupils dilated by fear they won't name. They don't speak it, but it spills through their posture. Am I enough? Will they like me? What if I fail? Questions, 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 dripping off their shoulders like sweat. That's what they bring into every room. Silent insecurity. Their eyes flicker toward others for cues, scanning for safety, watching for acceptance. But you don't need to ask. Because you didn't wait for answers. You became them. Not through talk, but through trial. Not through thinking, but through endurance. Now, while they fidget and search for approval in every gaze, you stand upright, with something ancient etched into your bones. Certainty carved by chaos. You didn't inherit answers, you earned them. Through betrayal, through famine, through the kind of pain that doesn't get a name, just echoes. While they were building identities with opinions and hashtags, you were building a spine that could carry a world. You don't walk in hoping people see you, you walk in already knowing what they can't see. That every breath you take was bought with sacrifice. That every calm look you offer comes with storms behind it. They ask, what should I do? You don't. You decide. And that alone unsettles them, because in a world trained to hesitate, anyone who chooses with conviction becomes a threat. You became a threat not by yelling louder, but by knowing more. Not in mind, in marrow. They call you arrogant because you don't defer. They call you cold because you don't beg. But they misunderstand. It's not detachment. It's depth. You didn't bypass the darkness. You walked through it with a matchstick between your teeth. Now when you move, it's with the kind of grounded energy that terrifies the frantic. You aren't searching for signs because you are one. A sign that someone can survive without folding, that someone can carry answers no one handed them. It's not what you say, it's how you move. Like the world could tilt and you'd remain unmoved. Not because you don't feel, but because you're aligned with something they haven't met yet. Truth forged in pressure. Watch their reactions. They listen with their heads tilted, eyes half-wayed out, waiting for a flicker of hesitation from you. But you give them none. You move like you already resolved every war they're still avoiding. That kind of posture shakes people. They confuse questions for curiosity, but questions are often camouflage, for fear, for permission, for avoidance. You don't ask who you are, you show it. You don't ask what's right, you become it. And that precision, that silent dominance, it pierces through the charades they dress themselves in. Because you walk like a verdict, and most people haven't even written their opening statement.